Good evening. An alcoholic wandered into a tavern, saw a sign that read, "All you can drink $1," and said, "I'll have $2 worth." It takes something special to understand the alcoholic, and it takes a little something more special to help him get sober. What I'd like to do this evening is just make some personal comments about the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, the most powerful therapy on earth. First of all, I do so with permission of the central office of AA. They discovered in the writings of its founder, Bill Wilson, a statement to the effect that AA did not invent these 12 principles, they simply discovered them. They've been around for centuries. And so it was felt that anyone should be allowed to make any comment he chooses. Secondly, I am, however, not a representative of AA, nor am I an official spokesman for AA. There is no such thing. By what token, then, do I make these remarks? As a clergyman, I have dealt with the problem over a lot of years. And in order to learn something about the disease and how to deal with it, I have availed myself of its invitation to attend open meetings. In the area where I live, there is read before every meeting a prologue that says, "We welcome and appreciate the cooperation of the medical profession, the clergy, and the public in general." So I have gone to hundreds of AA meetings, and I would like to share with you what I have learned from the men and women of that magnificent fellowship. AA started in 1935 in the Akron, Ohio home of Henrietta Seiberling by two men, Bill Wilson, a stockbroker, and Dr. Bob Smith, a surgeon. Desperate to stay alive, they reached out to anyone and everyone who might be able to help them. They accepted everything offered, keeping what worked and discarding what didn't. And they came up with these 12 simple sentences whereby they got well and have helped hundreds of thousands of others to get well. Please note, as we go along, every single one of these steps is written in the past tense. It's the only therapy on earth that dares to do that. They are not theorizing, if you do this, this might happen. They are chronicling what had been done. We've already done these things. This is the way we got sober. And I would just like to make some comments on these brilliant principles. The very first principle in AA of importance is the tremendous importance for each new alcoholic to get a sponsor, someone already in AA to guide him in the living of AA life. As a man once told me, it was not these 12 principles printed on a sheet of paper that saved my life. Someone could have mailed them to me, I could have read them and died drunk. It was a man who saved my life, my sponsor. It was the 12 steps carved in his life that simply made me want to be like him. All I had to do was do what he told me to do. And what he told me to do was these 12 things. If you do them, we promise certain things. And if you don't do them, we promise certain things. Let's begin at the beginning. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Ladies and gentlemen, powerless is an absolute term. There are no ifs, no ands, no buts, no qualifications, no conditions. Powerless. It is an acknowledgement of total surrender to a fact that is completely unpleasant. I can't handle alcohol, the alcoholic says. When I drink it, I lose. When I fight it, it wins. Surrender to an inanimate object. But paradoxically enough, The alcoholic surrenders to gain victory. He loses the battle to win the war. And so the only way that he will take on the rest of these 11 steps is to have this one firmly in mind. To me, step 1 is not something that you take and then go on. Step 1 is an acknowledgement of one's condition. The alcoholic says, I cannot handle alcohol. It handles me. I am an alcoholic down here, not just up here. I know some intellectuals who have acknowledged up here that they are alcoholics, but they haven't really bought it down in the guts of their souls. And they wind up dead. Because of all terminal diseases, alcoholism is the most terminal. If the alcoholic does not quit the drinking, if he does not stop the drinking will ultimately stop him. And so he must acknowledge what is so. He admits a colossal weakness. And ladies and gentlemen, one of the things in AA that many, many people find it difficult to do is to acknowledge a weakness. But my gosh, that's the strength of an alcoholic, is the acknowledgement that he can't handle alcohol. Because if he builds his life around that fact, he can live contentedly without it. My friends, a moron knows how strong he is. A genius knows how weak he is. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a conviction of mine that the depth and the seriousness with which an alcoholic will work the next 11 steps depends directly on the depth and the seriousness with which he accepts step 1. I cannot handle alcohol. When the alcoholic acknowledges that he is completely helpless, all of his own efforts have failed, he then ceases to be hopeless. Now there's hope. And where there's hope, he will reach out for help. Because when on the back burners of his mind, the alcoholic still believes that he can handle a drink, he'll try. He'll try. This is an absolute powerless. Many an alcoholic says, my life unmanageable? I never lost a wife, I never lost a family, I never lost a job, I didn't lose my cars, I still have a bank account. The director of a treatment center once told me, he said a man had attended some of the lectures while he was in treatment, and he came to his office one day, he said, those things never happened to me. And the fellow said, fine, we have just discussed what alcohol has not done to you. Now let's talk about what it has done. And he had him. Number one, you're here. We don't treat people with string bean problems here. Alcohol. That's what brought you here. And then they went on to the other things. Ladies and gentlemen, do you know what the alcoholic is like in his drinking days? The alcoholic is a man or a woman who climbs into a boxing ring with a champion and gets beat up. And he keeps doing that. And he keeps doing that. And 16 years of this. He climbs out of bed one day, he's all black and blue, he's on his hands and knees. Guess what he's wondering? As he's crawling toward the ring, how can I not get beat up today? AA leans over his shoulder and says, don't get in the ring. That's too simple. Too simple. And yet, you know the statement that you hear in AA. If you don't take a drink, you can't get drunk. One's strength is in acknowledging his weakness. If I know I'm going to get beat up when I get in there, I don't get in there. And I stay well. That's what step 1 is about. A lot of people do find that this word unmanageable is unacceptable, simply because they haven't lost a whole lot. I heard a man say this: when I was drinking alcohol, an inanimate object controlled the greatest gift God gave me, my mind. Seriously, you think about it during your drinking days. Alcohol controls about 95% of the alcoholic's waking thought. Controls the people you associate with and those you stay away from. It dictates the restaurants you go into and those you stay away from. Come on. Alcohol is in control of the life of the alcoholic. So what does he do? How does the alcoholic get out of this? How does he, in his helplessness, reach out for hope? and help. When he's introduced to AA, he enters a room and looks at sober alcoholics. And if he keeps coming back and looks at enough sober alcoholics, and he listens 22 years, 11 years, 8 years, 6 years, he comes to believe that something bigger than himself can get him well. He knows that good health, recovery is possible. He's looking at it. So he comes to believe that a power greater than self, power greater than ourselves, could restore us to sanity. If I acknowledge inside of me that the power to not drink is not in here, but I know it's somewhere because somebody's using it, I can see sober people, then the power has to be outside of me. If it's not in, it's out. You don't need a master's degree to grab that. Restore me to sanity? It's a little bit difficult for some people to grasp. It's hard enough being drunk. Don't tell me I was crazy too. Ladies and gentlemen, I was privileged once in my life to have met Bill Wilson. It was in 1960, and I was with a national clergy conference on alcoholism, and we were there to learn something about the disease, and it was the first and only time that Bill had ever addressed that group. And he explained exactly what he meant by this. The insanity of the alcoholic is not the nutty things when he's drunk. You non-alcoholics do nutty things when you get drunk. The insanity of the alcoholic, according to Bill Wilson, is when the alcoholic is completely physically sober and he picks up the first drink of the next series. That is totally irrational behavior. It is insane to choose to consume a drug that is killing you. You remember from the old chalk talk, I over E is the formula for rational behavior. Intellect predominating over emotions. Add A, alcohol, to that formula. Drug the brain that controls that formula, you will have a reversal, E over I. So that you find emotions dominating the life of the alcoholic and reason goes to seed. Doesn't the big book of AA refer to alcoholism as self-will run riot? E over I, the insanity of alcoholic behavior, plus AA is a reversal again back to normalcy. And the power to do that has to come from outside of self if I've already admitted that I don't have it. Power greater than self. I've heard that many in AA is completely terrified of God because of the things that he did during his drinking days. That, by the way, is why Bill Wilson made one change in the 12 steps. He used to have God here. And it was too threatening right in the beginning, so he substituted that phrase, power greater than ourselves. I have heard already sick alcoholics told by sponsors or by others, well, if you have no God, try that coffee cup or that fence post or that radiator. Ladies and gentlemen, I take great exception to that for this reason. In the next breath, people will say, keep coming to meetings, you have to come to meetings. But if I'm told that the power that will restore me to sanity is a coffee cup, if I were new to AA, I would kiss you goodbye by saying I have a coffee cup at home. I don't need your meetings if that's where I'm to get sobriety. My friends, the alcoholic is already sick. He already has a horrible image of self. Don't hold up as something greater than human nature, something that is already inferior to it. Why not hold up the power of the group as a power greater than self? You know AA's most beautiful motto, we can do what I can't. Example, the strength of others. 4 is bigger than 1. 2 is bigger than 1. 100,000 is bigger than 1. That's a power greater than self. Ultimately, we hope people will come to a belief in a supreme being that is a power greater than all. But that's another tale. Once I acknowledge that there is a power capable of restoring me to sanity, as it has restored a whole lot of others to sanity, I have to get in touch. And so I make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God, as AA says, as we understood Him. I know a lot of priests in AA, and they will say, I'm not here as a Catholic priest talking Catholic theology. I would just like to say that I have a God of my understanding as you have a God of your understanding. I turn myself over to God. My philosophy did not work, says the alcoholic. I continued to get drunk. What I must do is shift my whole inner being over to another philosophy of life that will work. Now, I know it works because I'm looking at it. And you're telling me that these 12 steps are the things that do it. And so this is the care of God that I put myself in. I make a decision to turn my will and life over to the care of God, and then I spend every day for the rest of my life trying to carry out that decision. Basically and bluntly, AA is a rather simple thing. Step 1, I can't handle it. Step 2, God can. Step 3, I think I'll get in touch. These get the alcoholic sober. Now, the problem is staying that way. Ladies and gentlemen, every alcoholic gets sober hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times in his life. When you can't drink anymore, you have to stop, and ultimately you get sober. The problem is you always begin again. Insanity. The insanity of the alcoholic, starting it over again. How do we stay well? There's one line in the big book that says, half measures availed us nothing. What happens in alcoholism? The whole human being is destroyed. Body, mind, emotion, and soul. What is recovery? A restoration of body, mind, emotion, and soul. In other words, the job has to be complete. The job has to be complete. There needs to be a total overhaul of the human being. Where do we begin? By finding out what has to be done. We have to find out what has to be done. Every store, every business takes an inventory every so often. And so, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Why is that word moral here in this business that we call a disease? We have to make a basic distinction. Ladies and gentlemen, the disease is not immoral. The subsequent behavior, which is a result of a drugged conscience, is always immoral. And the alcoholic cannot live with all of that, his past behavior, sober. Somehow or other, he's got to resolve the guilt of his past. What does an inventory do? Shows me what I've got, shows me what I haven't got, shows me what has to go. This is what we have to do with the human life. What have I got? Plenty. I've got plenty. Part of the pride of many alcoholics is a horrible self-image in which he says, I'm a nothing and I've got nothing. Then why did God signal you out to get well when 10 others might die? For every alcoholic who gets well, there are a number who won't. Every alcoholic has to ask himself, why me? Many alcoholics say, why am I an alcoholic? When the question should be, why was I singled out to get well? I don't know why, but I believe this. I can't prove it, but I believe it. I believe that everybody has within him some talent that is capable of touching another human heart that others can't touch. You better find out what it is. You're going to be asked to use it someday. God never made a nothing. I've got plenty of talents, and so do you. There's a whole lot that I don't have. And many of us spend our lives envying people their talents. Good heavens, forget that. You know, AA is a wise mother. I've learned this. Have you ever heard all this psychiatric stuff? He's alcoholic because he has an inferiority complex. And let's probe your child. You know what AA does? She looks you right in the eye and says, does it ever occur to you you might have an inferiority complex because you're inferior? I'm inferior to everybody in some way or another. Accept that and get on with it. God gave me talents. I'm supposed to use them and develop them, and you develop yours. And if we walk hand in hand and you make your contribution and I make mine, we might save a life. What has to go? All the undesirable stuff in my life, my bad habits, really. Now watch this. How do I resolve guilt? We admitted to God. He knows anyway. To ourselves, that's a little tough. And to one other human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. Ladies and gentlemen, every one of us is three. I am who I think I am. It's about that far off target. I am who you think I am. It's about 9,000 miles off target. Then there's the real me. And AA makes the alcoholic try to find the real self. Not the false image in his own mind, not the false image in the minds of others, but the real one. You know how it's done? Simplicity itself. Look at the record. Look at the record. Look at the record. Look at the record. And as the big book suggests, write it out. A man whom I respect very deeply once made the statement, after he had written out his life, he said, I was absolutely appalled at what alcoholism had done to me. He was looking at it. My friends, the surest way to humility is through humiliation. The surest way to humility is through humiliation. And there's nothing more humiliating than having one other human being know the real me. Who of you in this room would want any given 24-hour period of your life, every thought, every desire, every word, every feeling, shown on a screen to the rest of the world? I wouldn't want you to see my best day.